Holden and saying, boy, if we don't get these 2 games in, we're not even gonna qualify for the tournament. So there's an open tournament. They haven't stressed how that will operate yet. My hope is that they will try to keep it regional in the early rounds, knowing that eventually you'll have to move your way up. So one of my things I say is, with all the work we've done, I would hope in round 1 you don't have Lisbon traveling to Portsmouth Christian. Now, potentially, if they make the championship game, maybe you get to that point. But that would be my hope, but that would be left up to each individual sports committee. And there's a sports committee for every sport.
We started talking about this a couple meetings ago. I think Carrie shared some insight on the traveling teams and that schools don't have them. I didn't have that perspective from our own family, one child. That was really helpful. And then Andy was talking about, and I think all of us voiced, concern, wanting to understand the structure. And you guys are very thorough. So for me personally, it addresses any questions I had or feel I have to have as a board member when something like this comes forward. So I think the work done has been very good. It gives some flexibility, so at the last minute, if there is a concern, that was the thing I pushed you on in the last meeting. If there's at the last minute, what do we do? What's the flex? And it seems like you guys have addressed that very effectively.
So I appreciate it, and the one thing I just want to point out as well, I certainly appreciate it, there's a safety piece, the other piece, and stuff from other schools. In addition to the safety piece, one thing you run into, if you don't have it at the school, the access becomes very socioeconomic as well, because there are kids who have access to go travel a long way, and there's kids who don't have access. And so by us being able to offer the school, we're keeping it fair, I guess would be the best way to put it. And so we're really excited because, again, some of our kids have the means to go travel all over New England and all over the state, and some of our kids don't. And so they depend upon us for that. So we appreciate, on behalf of the students, really appreciate your willingness to be open-minded on it.
I mean, this is really great. I think it's really comprehensive, and he's done a great job putting all of this together. I guess just one quick question on the transportation, because some of these are weekend games and after-school games. We know busing is going to be a challenge. Are you going to let the kids drive themselves for those who can?
It's a great question. So no.
Okay. Yeah.
So we are not going to allow students to drive to those games. Saturday we have more access, and this was working with Mr. Holden. Mr. Holden let us know early on that we have greater accessibility to transportation on the weekends because we're not making evening runs and things like that. We do. Mr. Frederick is going to be surveying students and parents maybe as early as tomorrow, certainly next week. We don't have games coming up for a couple of weeks. Which parents are willing to drive, which parents are willing to have kids drive with other parents. So we certainly hope to use the parents where need be. But I think an important question is we do not plan on leaving anybody whose parent can't get them there not being able to do that. But we do not intend to let the kids drive to the actual events.
No, it's good.
Yeah.
Then from an equality standpoint,
Same thing.
I mean, yeah, so if there's kids that, so I might be willing to drive as a parent, but there might be kids that don't have access to rides. Will that coordination be helped so that everybody does have?
Correct, and we're going to the best of our ability, keep those pods, those bubbles, so to speak, is consistent as we possibly can. So if we know that, Mrs. Claus is one of the drivers for the boys soccer team, for instance, it might be these 4 kids are going to be driving to these 4 games that we'll try not to mix and match to the best of our ability. And that's what we're trying to put into place right now.
Perfect. Good.
Great. Thanks for the work.
It sounds like you've got a really good communication system going with the other schools. What kind of thought process or what thresholds or what circumstances would trigger, game cancellation?
So the school does have a metrics, the state has a metrics of, plus or minus 5 for, I think it's 10,000. What I would look at, obviously, is if we're playing Fall Mountain Elementary School has sent home 3 kids that day with symptoms, I feel like we'll be okay to go. If Fall Mountain High School has sent home 5 kids with symptoms and 2 kids early had tested positive, we probably wouldn't be going to Fall Mountain to play that game. So just really looking at what the data is saying. Fall Mountain is gonna be getting their communication as we would be from Department of Health and Human Services, and so we're gonna rely on them. But if I look at it and say, Sean, Fall Mountain, the school might be okay, but the community itself has 10 brand new cases last week, and they're allowing spectators into our games. I'm not sure I feel comfortable going to that game. So just trying to really look at this, look at what's there, look at the numbers, and be logical.
Flexibility.
Yeah.
One
But
last,
hoping people will be realistic too. I mean, I think one of the tough things that's in here is, I think right now, we are the only folks that are potentially allowing folks into a volleyball game. And that's it really gonna be difficult, I think, for parents to come to that understanding. And we have to manage, if we're gonna allow parents in, are we allowing just our parents? Are we allowing parents from other schools in? Again, being indoors is a lot different from being outdoors on the soccer field. So there's still some details to work out there, but people are gonna have to be really willing to be flexible with us too.
last thing is, notice for me is the communication, so if there's a last minute change, what methods are used for communication?
So I can get a hold of any of my buses, I feel so confident that if I needed to get a hold of somebody at like halftime and say, we're done, we done the game at halftime.
What about, parents hearing a halftime surprise, what's the,
We would have parents there or buses there, right? So those parents that are going would have to stay and be
maybe
there.
that was obvious, but I
Yeah,
had to ask, okay. Anything else?
I guess middle school's starting next week too, so they're gonna, and as far as games go, it's gonna kind of follow, and we'll see
October, right?
how the
October
process
1st.
happens with,
Yeah, again, I think what's nice is, so we're starting to, they're actually starting closer to their normal time than, closer than the high school. The high school's usually been at it for a couple weeks, and the middle school's usually getting going, maybe this week. So they're going like a week later. Our high school are going about 3 weeks later. So I feel good that they get to start with everybody else. Everybody, with the exception of golf and bass fishing, who we're letting compete almost immediately because it's much safer. They're all going to do practice for 2 weeks. The only difference is the high school kids will be able to play against other schools after 2 weeks. Where the middle school, we're going to try to get them games against each other for 2 weeks, see where we are, and then in October, if things continue to go well, which knock on wood they are, then we'll be able to expand out more. Middle school's a little trickier. I feel good about this, but there's a lot of middle schools that have just said we're not doing it. Whereas almost all the high schools right now, almost all, not all, have done so. Mr. Fredericks reached out to middle schools, and some of them just are not offering anything right now. We're hoping that that changes in October as well. But we plan on making it special for the middle school kids. That's a high priority for us, and I'm confident we'll be able to do so. And that's why we've had discussions about, okay, I could go to Fall Mountain in late September. I could play, Sunapee Green versus Sunapee White under the lights. That might be just as special, even more special. So we're going to try to do those things for them.
It might be helpful too, with the protocols being so different at all the schools. Like, I know most of the coaches seem to be pretty good about giving like a weekly, here's where we're gonna be, here's what we've got going on, to just give an update. I'd hate to see parents drive to Fall Mountain thinking they can go watch the kids play and then they can't. So it
Yep.
might be,
That's good.
No, I'll tell you, we've all been busy. Mr. Frederick is certainly,
this is
he's
gonna
pretty
change
much
every
locked
day.
in, and he's in a lot of communication with the athletic directors, and we'll be able to get that information out.
yeah, and it's what it is today might be different next week,
Correct.
so that,
Yeah, and
Just
so
helpful.
what we're really trying to do is have
Yeah.
a weekly, like, okay, here's where we are this week, with the understanding that we could think on Wednesday that Fall Mountain's good on Thursday. And we might be a place where, you know what, the game's still on, but not the fans, because it could have been one of the things
Yeah.
where we weren't gonna send if there were fans. That could change things on a daily basis, but we're gonna try to do things to the best of our ability at the beginning of each week.
Moving on to students and staff supports. Thank you, sir.
It is. So Jesse, you figured this out last week, and it was last month, and it was interesting because as we all talked about this over the last couple of days, like, well, this is kind of what we do. This is what we do every day, day in and day out. So then I asked people to kind of think about it, and I'll ask them to jump in if they like, but I think one of the things that obviously we have in place, we have social emotional learning for our kids. We have bullying process in place for our kids. We just passed 2 policies today regarding harassment, sexual harassment. So you have board policies, we have structures, we have curriculums. This year, all our staff, based upon New Hampshire law, will be taking 2 hours of suicide training. So all staff in the building is taking that 2 hours of suicide training. We have mentor programs. And I think one of the things that's really unique here, and we've touched on it several times, our staff really know each other well. And even our new staff in this building, Sean puts sort of a buddy system together, and Walter's done the same. And so no one's really left to their own. We're not a faculty of 200 where if you came in, you maybe don't know half the people in the building. Our faculty meetings happen every other Wednesday. Folks are pretty in tune to one another. And it's not uncommon for even myself to walk by someone and say, is everything okay? How are you doing today? You know, and I think more so, we're probably a little more aware of that now. But that's what we've done every day since I've been here in the last 8 years, and since Sean's been here the last 20 years, and Megan the last 25 years. It's just what we do in the school, and we do it well, and I think it's part of the culture here. Yes, that has obviously been heightened a little bit based upon the situation of COVID, but I think we've all, you know, again, we talked about that anxiety, we talked about being patient, being kind with one another, and Megan said it, and you've heard other folks say, those are the things, the words that I think continue to resonate here. You know, be kind with one another, be patient with one another, and our kids understand that, and they see that, and we model that. So I can't say here's the program that we just put in place. There's a culture here that existed well before I got here and continues to flourish, and it is why we are who we are and what we do. But there are things, like I said, policy and programs and curriculums that are part of the everyday, but there's no specific, and there wasn't anything specific additionally added. Saying, okay, we're in COVID, we're going to do a weekly check-in with every teacher on Mondays. I try to do a weekly check-in, as I'm sure Walter and Sean and Megan do, and Tara does almost every day. Obviously, if we have to go to a remote setting, I think some of those things have to become a little more scheduled, because we're not face-to-face able to do it. So I don't know if that helps, and I'll ask Sean or Megan or Walter if they want to add anything on the specific, so please do.
I'll real quickly, just, you know, one of the things I think is really nice about our middle high school, we have a student support team, and it meets every week. It's guidance counselors, it's a school nurse, it's a school psychologist, it's Mrs. Reed, and teachers can refer students. So they're really things, sometimes it's academic, but sometimes it's, there might be a home situation that somebody's aware of, or there could be a medical concern or a social piece, you know. So they're meeting consistently, and they know the kids within that group. There's going to be somebody, at least one, who knows that student really well, and they're really always looking for what are the supports that we can give and who's the best person to do that. So again, like Mr. Holden said, we do that every year anyway. I think that will be even more important this year.
And I know at the elementary school, I can say two things. One, when Mr. Holden talks about how there's a culture, I'm the new member of the team. And I cannot begin to tell you, from the superintendent all the way down to the custodian, I am asked constantly, how are you doing? You know, how are things going? And that means a lot to me as an individual and as a leader, that they're checking in with me, but it also means I'm doing the same thing to them, saying, how are you doing? And people have been honest, you know, when they're having those moments that life is overwhelming, they will share and say life is overwhelming, and we can talk about it and answer their questions. The second part is when Ms. Monahan talked about how, you know, yes, like at the high school, at the elementary school, we have a student support service team in place as well. One of the challenges that we're facing though is time. You know, in years past, we can meet before school, we can meet after school, we can meet during lunch because teachers were off at the same time. Because the way the duty schedule works out, the elementary teachers walk in at 7:30 and they are on until 3 o'clock, and they are with students all day long. So it's trying to find those common times that we can pull a small group of people and trying to work a schedule where they have some time off that they can come together as a group. So that's been a slight challenge, and we're still working that part out. But we hope to have something in place for starting next week in order to do that.
Good, I think it's easy to go through policy, do all the normal program things you do, but I had asked about that last month. I can make it an agenda item, so I do think it's good sometimes, especially for families to, new paraeducators.
But again, we continue to look for, staff to help fulfill our needs with our students and our students' needs that are coming to us. And this, it's just informational items so you can see folks that we are hiring.
Yeah, it's very difficult to find employees right now. Lots of businesses have lots of openings, and there's not much of a pool, unprecedented.
How many openings do we have?
I think right now we're all set, although based upon some of our student needs that we're seeing, we may need to potentially advertise a little more for one or two more. So right now we are where we need to be, which is great.
And in this environment, tomorrow I'm looking for different.
Okay.
Special education determination.
So I'm gonna just quickly, because she won't probably do herself the justice, but, we put this in, I think I put it in here now probably 7 years in a row. This is a big deal. I was gonna say it's not that big of a deal. This is a big deal. This is us meeting our guidelines from special ed, and we've gone over them, you've seen them here, about meeting deadlines, 60-day deadlines, 40-day deadlines, reaching out to parents, students that are transitioning off until adulthood. There are lots of different pieces to this. It's not just, hey, we checked a couple boxes and it all great, we got a great determination letter back. So I'll let Tara get into it a little deeper if you like to, but I don't want her to gloss over it either, because this really is a big deal. There are not lots of folks that can make this happen the way we make it happen. Again, speak to Tara and her staff.
So this is the one test in school that you want a 0 on, and we were fortunate enough to get a 0 again this year. And it is, there's a piece of this that's deadlines, but there's also, there are also other pieces which include parent involvement and how parents feel like they are or are not included in school decision making. There are pieces around whether students are making progress the way we would expect them to, and whether or not they're making progress at the same rate general ed students are, whether or not there's inequities in identifying students or detentions and suspensions. So there's a lot that goes into this report, and it's part of our state performance plan. We're rated on it every year, and we're, as I said, we received a 0, which is the best score that you can for this past year. The staff's amazing. Everybody works really hard, and it's hard work to get an evaluation done in 60 days. Takes a lot of dedication, a lot of forethought, planning, talking with parents, talking with teachers, and being ready to do that immediately. So it's very proud of everybody.
Thanks for your good work. We are to manifest. I have a motion for AP manifest, please.
Make a motion to approve the AP manifest 2020-03 in the amount of $106,854.44.
We come in hot with a second.
I'll second Carrie's motion.
Any questions or comments about our June meeting work? All right, all in favor of approving the AP manifest, 2020-03, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I don't know if payroll is, we're on off week, so.
Yep, we're on.
Okay. Public forum in accordance with policy BEDH. Hand in the back, please speak loudly.
Hi, I'm Amanda Kulak. I have 2 hats in this. The first hat, I wanted to just speak on behalf of the teachers union for all of the support that we've gotten from the superintendent and our administrators. Like, yes, we've had some bumps in the road, but I can tell you, if we need something, we're getting a response immediately, and that there's no way that we could have opened. And overall, teachers feel super supportive and know that we have you guys, so very much appreciated. The second hat is my parent hat. I just was noticing that the proposed schedule, are we also looking at schools and whether they're wearing masks? For instance, Mount Royal, I heard, isn't doing masks, or some of that stuff, and this could all be rumor, but I just didn't know when looking at the schedule I saw them, if that's going to be considered their Sunapee, so they would be our numbers, but the protection. So I know you can't answer now, but I just wanted to throw that out there too.
Do
there's a number of things which come to the equation when we're gonna decide whether to schedule a team, whether we're gonna go to play them. So there's a number of things that we take into consideration.
Thanks. Other voices, please. Introduce yourself.
Nicole Galloway, I have a son, Jake Junior here, a three-state athlete. So first of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Moynihan and Mr. Frederick for the amount of time and energy they put into making sure that these students could have a sports season this year. Being an educator myself in special education, I know that these things change, not only monthly, weekly, daily, but sometimes by the hour, even by the minute. So it's really important that we have the flexibility and the fluidity between all of us, that we can understand that obviously I know that safety is number one, because as it should be, but that the social, emotional well-being of our kids, when 80% of the school's population are involved in sports, is also very, very important. One of the questions I had is the NHIA schedule that's posted on their website. Is that the schedule that we are moving forward with or no? Because that has been adjusted to include all the local games.
So, we gotta go with, yeah,
You can check with Sean.
yeah.
Call me
I would direct you to
Okay.
Dr. Sean.
Because I know that there was a schedule, obviously, prior to COVID, and then in the last week or so, that schedule on the NHIA has adjusted to talk about the games that you guys are talking about for regional games. The second thing is, if that was the schedule, it looks like the majority of our games are at home, which I thought was a positive thing, with only a few games being away. And then regarding transportation, if our bus limit is 20 students, would parents have to transport if the varsity team last year had 18 participants?
So I'm gonna direct you to talk to Mr. Moynihan tomorrow. When we have the public comment, it's gotta be hearing your voice. And
Okay, so I was just throwing that out there, that I know that the limit is 20, where, you know.
Right.
And then, this is a question for, Mr. Holden, the 14-day quarantine period, if students travel outside of the New England states, is that a school rule? Because I know the CDC has lifted the 14-day quarantine for all travel restrictions.
I think, these are our times, I think it's a highly relevant clarification to clarify.
The CDC has lifted that, and the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services has not, and so we're
Okay.
following the opinion.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Other voices? Mike?
I'll just make a quick comment on the sports and stuff. When I coached Lebanon tennis team, we only had 8 kids, and bus was an issue. Okay, so I could have rented a van and taken the kids down to Bedford. Instead, the school said you can't do that, parents can't drive your kids. So we had a bus take us to Bedford at 12 o'clock for a 4 o'clock match, and I had to sit in the park with all the kids. I don't know if that's what you guys do here with parents. The other thing we had to do with parents were you couldn't take your kid to the game, but you could pick them up, so you had sign-out sheets that had to be approved by the AD and the coaches. They had a list who can go home, especially now, if looks like how it's gonna happen with some of the pickups after the game. It's real important that you guys have, your coaches have a list who can go home, because we had issues with Mrs. Smith said, well, I'm taking John home. I'm like, John's not listed as you can't. And we got into battles with parents that way, so I know it's a whole new thing now with taking people home. The other thing is, looks like Kearsarge is not doing fall sports. So the question, I don't know if anybody's even approached Sunapee, is since if Sunapee didn't offer a sport, you could play over at Kearsarge, like football if you wanted to play. Is anybody from Kearsarge looking to Sunapee saying, hey, you guys are playing soccer, I got kids that want to play soccer on a high school team? That's something maybe the ADs might be looking at. Since you're not gonna offer it there, does that open up Sunapee to having to take other kids on a team? And the last statement is, this school, I believe, we all have to wear masks into the building as long as we're social distancing. So I'm assuming if you're doing volleyball in here and you can't put them 6 feet away, we're gonna see all masks and all the spectators that you are inviting. That's all I got.
Any other voices? It's great to hear from the community, so thanks for 3 speakers tonight. Items for next meeting, I think we have kind of already covered it, but do this in a quick, informal way. Did you have a presentation? update opportunity for the committee that's plugging along. If there's no update, that's okay, but hoping that your group can attend. EI will be the focus, update on sports and some of the kind of cyclical things. I don't think outside of, I can't think of anything outside of what would be a normal October meeting topics with the updates, the committees.
We'll have, October 1 enrollment.
Yeah, and it's the second, isn't it, just to make sure everybody knows the meeting? Give me a second.
It is the 7th.
Seven?
I'm sorry, that's,
No.
that is October. The 7th,
Yeah, it would be the seventh, right?
7th,
October seventh.
Yep.
Yeah, it is, it's funny, I didn't remember the second. All right, well, Wednesday, October 7th, 6 p.m. It'll look strangely familiar for those of you who come back, same setup, okay? Motion to adjourn at 7:27. I make a motion to adjourn at 7:27. Do I have a second?
I'll second your motion.
I got a double second. Andy comes in just to ask Scott. Thanks for being here, being engaged in the community. We'll see you soon. Take care.